The alien colony was quiet. Too quiet for a place usually filled with voices. People stood in groups at the edge of the settlement, their eyes fixed on the massive forest that stretched endlessly beyond. The forest was dark, alive with shadows, and every alien there knew what lived inside it, the apex predator. For generations, their stories had warned children not to wander near the wild. The predator was a monster, a beast bigger than any animal, faster than any soldier, sharper than any weapon. Its roar could shake the ground, and its teeth could tear through steel. Every hunter, every warrior who had gone into the wild to kill or tame it had never returned. Now, a single human stood at the edge of that cursed land. He carried no heavy armor, no army at his side. His clothes were simple, his pack light, and his only weapon was a short blade strapped to his waist. To the aliens watching, he looked fragile, foolish, almost suicidal. Why is he doing this? One alien whispered. "He will not come back," another replied. "No one ever comes back. He is only human, weak, short-lived. This is madness." The human heard their whispers but did not turn around. His eyes were fixed on the trees. Ahead, his face calm, his steps steady. He walked as if the dark forest did not frighten him, as if the monster inside was not death itself. At the colony's gates, an alien commander stepped forward, his voice sharp. "Human, you do not have to prove anything. Leave the wild to myths. You will die if you go in." The human paused only for a moment. He glanced back, his eyes meeting the commander's. His voice was quiet, steady, and carried across the crowd. "If death waits, then I will meet it. But if life waits, then I will bring it back with me." No one knew what he meant, but the calmness of his tone silenced them all. He turned again and stepped into the wild. The trees swallowed him quickly. Within minutes, his figure disappeared into the shadows, leaving only silence behind. The colony stood frozen, their eyes fixed on the forest, as though expecting to hear his scream at any moment. Inside the wild, the air was heavier. The forest was alive with strange sounds, low growls, rustling leaves, distant roars that sent chills even through trained soldiers. But the human steps did not falter. He walked carefully, studying the ground, marking the path in his mind. The deeper he went, the darker it became. The canopy above blocked out most of the light, and the air smelled of earth and danger. Every shadow seemed to move, every branch seemed to watch, yet his face remained calm. He touched the bark of trees, feeling their texture. He listened to the calls of birds and the growl of smaller beasts. He was not rushing to find the predator. He was learning the rhythm of the wild. Hours passed, and the sun dipped low beyond the canopy. The human stopped near a river that cut through the forest. Its water glowed faintly under the light of two alien moons. He crouched, dipping his hand into the cold stream, then raised it to his lips. Behind him, something moved. The human froze, but did not reach for his blade. The sound was heavy, deliberate, like thunder muffled by distance. Branches cracked, and the forest fell silent. Even the birds stopped singing. His heart pounded, but his breathing remained steady. He knew what it was. The predator was near. A shape emerged from the shadows, massive, taller than any beast he had ever seen. Its eyes glowed yellow in the moonlight, its teeth glinted sharp, and its body rippled with muscle and power. The ground itself seemed to tremble as it stepped closer. Most would have run. Most would have screamed, but the human only turned slowly, facing it. His eyes met its glowing gaze. He did not raise his blade. He did not make a sound. For a long moment, the predator stared at him, its deep growl rumbling through the forest. The human stood still, unflinching, his calmness louder than any roar. The wild had begun its test, and somewhere back at the colony, The aliens waited in silence, certain they had already witnessed the last time a human would ever walk into the wild. The forest swallowed the human, and the heavy gates of the colony closed behind him. For a while, no one spoke. The crowd that had gathered to watch stood in silence, staring into the dark wall of trees as if waiting for something to happen. But the forest gave nothing back, no sound, no movement, only stillness. Finally, the whispers began. He will not last an hour, not even half that. The predator will smell him, and it will be over. He is only human. His kind does not survive in the wild. The voices carried through the colony streets, growing louder as the people dispersed. Some shook their heads in pity, others laughed quietly, mocking the man who had dared to step into death itself. To them, he was already gone. Inside the council chamber, the alien leaders gathered. The commander who had spoken to the human earlier stood at the center, his expression dark. He slammed a fist on the table. This is madness. A human cannot succeed where our best hunters failed. Another leader, older and gray, leaned back in his chair, his voice slow and sharp. Perhaps that is why he went. To prove something. Humans are strange creatures. They act, not for survival, but for pride. A third added with a bitter chuckle. Pride will not stop the predator's teeth. Their laughter was hollow, uneasy. Deep down, none of them liked to admit how the human's calm eyes had unsettled them. He had not looked like a fool walking. To his death, he had looked certain. Outside the chamber, the colony was alive with gossip. Young aliens gathered in circles, retelling stories of the predator. They spoke of its massive claws, of its roar that cracked stone, of the hunters who had tried to capture it. Some claimed the beast could move faster than the eye could follow. Others swore it could smell fear and strike before anyone could raise a weapon. And now a human thinks he can tame it. One young voice scoffed. Ridiculous. He will be bones by nightfall. The others laughed, but not all of them. A few stayed quiet, remembering the human's words before he left. If death waits, then I will meet it. But if life waits, then I will bring it back with me. The day passed, night fell. The colony lights burned bright, casting long shadows across the streets. Families returned to their homes, but the unease lingered. Some peered from their windows at the dark outline of the forest. No sound came, no scream, no roar, no sign of what had happened to the human the next morning. The doubt grew stronger. He is dead, one merchant declared as he opened his shop. No one can spend a night in the wild and live. The beast would have found him already. By midday, others joined in the chorus of disbelief. Foolish human, weak species. He was brave, but bravery does not tame monsters. Even the council began to plan how to speak of his death when word finally came when his body was discovered. They argued whether to call him reckless or noble, whether to honor his attempt or dismiss it as foolishness. But one alien voice broke the pattern. A young girl, barely grown, stood in the marketplace listening to the mockery. Her eyes flashed as she spoke. You all laugh, but you saw his eyes. He did not look like prey. He walked as if he knew something we did not. The crowd hushed for a moment, then laughter returned. Children believe in stories, an elder said with a wave of his hand. The human will not return. Yet doubt remained. Another night came, and still no word. The silence from the wild was heavier now, pressing down on the colony. Even those who mocked the loudest could not deny the unease that twisted in their stomachs. By the third day, whispers of fear replaced the laughter. What if Atias not died yet? What if the predator plays with him before the kill? Or worse, what if he has seen it and run? The idea of the human fleeing angered many. To them, cowardice was worse than death. Yet none could explain why his absence gnawed at them so deeply. On the fourth day, the council gathered again. The commander's face was pale with frustration. This waiting is poison. We must send scouts. If his body lies in the forest, we must recover it before the predator desecrates it. But the old gray leader raised a hand. His eyes were sharp, his tone heavy with thought. No, we will wait. If he is alive, the predator will show itself. And if he is dead, the forest will return him to us soon enough. Either way, his fate. It is no longer in our hands. The words settled over the council like a shadow. Outside, the people whispered again. 4 days. And still no death cry. Still no roar. Maybe the beast ignores him. Or maybe he is already bones in the mud. But there were others, quieter voices, who began to wonder. What if he found a way? What if he walks with the predator even now? Most laughed at the suggestion, but deep down, hidden, beneath the doubt, a spark of curiosity began to burn. Because every story they knew ended. The same way hunters went into the wild and never returned. But this story was different. This time, silence stretched on longer than ever before. And silence, they knew, was sometimes more dangerous than noise. The colony waited, torn between certainty and doubt, fear and curiosity, and in the wild, unseen. By their eyes, something was already beginning to change. The forest grew darker the deeper the human walked. The air was thick with mist, and every sound carried like a warning. Leaves rustled in the wind, branches snapped under unseen footsteps, and strange cries echoed far in the distance. Did not stop. His eyes studied every shadow, his ears measured every sound. Most who entered the wild carried heavy weapons and strong armor. They believed strength would protect them. Yet their bones never returned. The human carried little, only a small blade, some food, and a calmness that seemed out of place in a world built to kill. For 3 days he moved through the wilderness, following the signs left on the trees and the ground. He saw claw marks, deep enough to tear stone. He saw footprints the size of shields pressed into the mud. The predator's presence was everywhere, like a storm always waiting just ahead. At night, when the forest fell quiet, he sat by a small fire and listened. The silence of the wild was never empty. It carried whispers, movements, the steady rhythm of a beast that hunted in darkness. The predator was near, always near, but it did not strike. Not yet. On the 4th evening, the air shifted. The forest grew still, too still. Birds stopped calling, insects vanished. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. The human looked up, his hand resting on the hilt of his blade, not to draw it, but to feel its weight, to remind himself of choice. A branch cracked. The sound was heavy, deliberate. The ground trembled faintly, as though the earth itself knew what approached. The predator had arrived. From the shadows, glowing eyes appeared to burning lights in the mist. Then came the growl, low and deep, rolling like thunder across the trees. The human rose slowly to his feet, his body steady, its heart loud but controlled. The beast stepped into view. It was massive, larger than any creature he had ever seen. Its body was covered in thick, dark fur that rippled with each movement. Its claws were long as daggers, and its teeth glinted like blades under the pale light of the moons. Every step shook the ground. Every breath came out as a snarl of smoke and heat. For most, this was the end. Warriors would raise their weapons. Hunters would fire. And the predator would crush them before they could even blink. But the human did not move. He stood still, his hands at his sides, his eyes locked on the beast's glowing gaze. He did not run. He did not raise his blade. He simply breathed, steady and calm. The predator's growl grew louder, echoing through the trees. It lowered its head, muscles coiling, ready to strike. Its jaws opened, showing rows of teeth built for tearing. Yet the human's voice broke the silence, soft and steady. "I am not your enemy." The words carried no fear. They were spoken not like a challenge, but like a truth. The predator paused, tilting its massive head. It growled again, stepping closer, its hot breath washing over him. The human reached into his pack-knot for his blade, but for food. Slowly, carefully, he pulled out a piece of dried meat and placed it on the ground before him. Then he stepped back, lowering himself into a crouch. The predator's eyes narrowed, glowing brighter. It sniffed the air, growled once more, then lowered its head. With a sharp snap of its jaws, it devoured the offering. The forest held its breath. The predator's eyes returned to the human, but this time there was no immediate strike. Instead, it growled low, circling him. Its massive body moved with the grace of a hunter, its claws digging into the earth, its muscles shifting like coiled steel. The human turned slowly with it, never lowering his gaze, never showing fear. His every movement was calm, deliberate. Respectful, he did not raise his blade. He did not run at last. The predator stopped, its glowing eyes locked on his. For a long moment, neither moved. Then, with a final snarl, the beast stepped back into the shadows and vanished. The human released a slow breath. His heart pounded, but his body was steady. He knew the encounter was not an ending, it was the beginning. The predator had spared him, not because of weakness, but because of something else. A test. The wild was not conquered in a day. It demanded patience, respect, and courage. The human understood this. And now, he knew the predator understood him too. That night, as he sat by his fire, he did not feel alone. Somewhere in the darkness, glowing eyes watched. The predator had not left. It was near, observing, waiting, and the human, calm as ever, whispered into the night, "We will meet again." Far away, back in the colony, the aliens mocked and doubted, certain he was already dead. But in the heart of the wild, a fragile bond had begun. The first step of the impossible had been taken. The fourth night in the wild was different. The air felt heavier, thick with anticipation. The forest was alive with sound, creatures calling, branches snapping, leaves rustling, but beneath it all was something deeper. A presence. Watching, the human sat by his fire, his back straight, his face calm. He knew it was near. The predator had not left him since their first encounter. He felt its gaze in the shadows, sharp and unblinking. It was waiting at midnight. The fire flickered low, and the forest grew still. The predator stepped into the clearing. Its glowing eyes cut through the dark, its massive body moving with silent power. This time, there was no hesitation in its approach. It came directly. Toward him, the ground shook under its weight. Its growl rolled through the night like thunder. Its jaws opened wide, teeth glinting with moonlight, each one sharp enough to end him in a breath. The human rose slowly to his feet, his eyes locked on the beast. His heart pounded, but his breathing stayed steady. He did not reach for his blade. He did not step back. The predator stopped a few feet away, its head low, its eyes burning. It circled him, muscles tense, every step deliberate. It was testing him. The human turned with it, calm, unflinching. Suddenly, the predator lunged forward, not to kill, but to frighten. Its massive claws slashed the air inches from his chest. The wind from its strike tore his sleeve, sending shreds of cloth drifting into the night. The human did not move. The predator growled, louder now, frustrated. It circled again, snapping its jaws close to his face, its hot breath washing over him. Its roar shook the trees, sending birds scattering into the night sky. Still, The human stood his ground. Inside, his body screamed at him to run, to fight, to survive. But his mind was calm. He knew fear was what the predator wanted. Fear was what it had seen in every warrior, every hunter, every victim. And fear was what had made them prey. He whispered softly, his voice low but steady. "I will not fear you." The predator froze. Its ears twitched. Its eyes narrowed. Slowly, it lowered its head, sniffing at him, its massive nostrils flaring. The human remained still, his gaze steady. The beast pulled back and gave another roar, louder than before, so loud it shook the fire itself. Sparks flew into the air, and the flames bent backward. The human's body trembled under the force, but he did not move. His eyes stayed locked on the predators. For a long, tense moment, the two stood there, man and beast, predator and prey, locked in silence. Then, with a deep snarl, the predator turned and stalked away into the shadows. The human released a slow breath. His legs felt heavy, his chest burned with the effort of control, but his face remained calm. He knew this was not the end. This was a test. The next day, he followed the predator's trail deeper into the wild. The signs were everywhere: trees clawed, bones scattered, the air thick with its scent. He knew it was watching him. Every step was part of the trial. At noon, he reached a clearing where the predator waited. It sat on a rock, its golden eyes fixed on him, its body still but tense. Around it lay the remains of its kills, giant beasts, torn apart with terrifying ease. The human stepped into the clearing. His every instinct screamed danger, but he kept his movements calm. He reached into his pack and pulled out water. Slowly, he poured some into his hand and set it on the ground. Then he stepped back. The predator's eyes narrowed. It growled low, padding forward with thunderous steps. It lowered its head, sniffed the water, then lapped it up in a single swipe of its tongue. It looked back at him. For the first time, its growl softened. The human inclined his head slightly. "You test me, but I am not here to be your prey." The predator snorted, as if in answer, then turned and disappeared into the trees. That night, as the human rested, he felt the presence near again. The predator did not attack this time. Instead, it circled the camp quietly, its glowing eyes flickering in the dark. It was still testing him, but less with claws and more with patience. The human lay back on the earth, staring at the canopy above. His lips curved faintly into a smile. "We are not enemies," he whispered into the night. "You know that now?" The forest gave no reply, but somewhere in the shadows, a deep growl echoed softly, not of anger, but of acknowledgement. The predator had not accepted him yet, but it no longer saw him as weak. The test was not over. But for the first time, he felt the impossible might be within reach. The forest was no longer silent, for the human it was alive in a new way. Every sound, every shadow, every movement carried meaning. He knew the predator was close, watching, waiting. He could feel its presence the way one feels the weight of a storm in the air. Days passed since the first test. Each day he walked further into the wild, and each night the predator circled his fire. At first, its growls were sharp, its eyes glowing with suspicion, but over time, the tone changed. The growls became softer, not warnings, but signals. It was still dangerous, still untamed, but it no longer came with claws raised. The human understood. Trust was not given in a moment. It was earned slowly, like fire coaxed from cold stone. On the sixth day, he came to a river where the predator hunted. He saw it leap from the shadows, its claws tearing into a massive beast that had come to drink. The kill was fast, brutal, a display of raw power that shook the ground. The human did not run. He stood still, his heart pounding, but his eyes calm. When the predator turned its head toward him, blood dripping from its jaws, he did not flinch. Instead, he crouched low, keeping his gaze steady, but not challenging, showing respect. Then, he did something no alien would dare. He stepped forward, slowly, carefully. He cut a piece of meat from his own supplies and placed it on a flat rock. He set it down and stepped back, lowering his head in acknowledgement. The predator's golden eyes flickered with confusion. It growled low, circling the offering, sniffing the air. For a long moment, it ignored the meat, its gaze locked on the human as if testing him again. Then, with a quick snap of its jaws, it devoured the food. The human said nothing, only watched. But inside, his chest warmed. A small step. A bridge built with patience. That night, when he lit his fire, the predator came again. Instead of staying in the shadows, it lay down at the edge of the clearing. Its massive body half hidden, but close enough for him to see its golden eyes glowing in the flames. It did not sleep, but it did not leave. The human whispered softly, almost to himself, "You are learning, as I am learning." The predator gave a low rumble, not of threat, but of acknowledgement. The days that followed deepened the bond. The human began to mirror the predator's movements. When it drank from the river, he drank nearby. When it stalked silently through the forest, he followed, keeping pace. Showing he could respect its space. Sometimes the predator would vanish into the wild, hunting, roaring in the distance. But it always returned. Always. One evening, the human stumbled. The forest floor was uneven, and a hidden root caught his foot. He fell hard, the wind knocked from his lungs. At once, the predator appeared from the trees, its massive head lowering, its growl rising. For a heartbeat, he thought it would strike, but it did not. Instead, it sniffed him, its hot breath washing over his skin. Then it gave a snort, as if mocking his clumsiness, and moved back. The human laughed softly to himself, pain in his side but relief in his heart. "You laugh at me now," he said, "but you did not kill me. That is enough." On the 10th day, the bond grew clearer. The human found himself surrounded by smaller predators, pack hunters with sharp teeth and glowing eyes. They circled him, snarling, ready to tear him apart. He stood tall, his blade ready, but his heart calm. Then the roar came. It shook the trees, rattling the ground, freezing the smaller predators in place. The apex predator emerged from the shadows, its eyes burning like fire. The smaller creatures scattered instantly, fleeing into the night. The human stood still, his chest heaving. The predator turned its gaze on him. For a long moment, their eyes met. The human nodded once, slow and steady. "Thank you." The predator snorted again and walked past him, its body brushing against his shoulder as it vanished into the trees. That night, the predator did not stay at the edge of the clearing. It came closer, lying just beyond the firelight. Its breathing was deep, steady, like the rhythm of the forest itself. The human lay down too, his body tired but his spirit alive. He closed his eyes, whispering softly, "We are no longer enemies. Not prey and hunter. Something more." And though the predator made no sound, its presence was the answer. The impossible was becoming real. A bond was forming. Not of dominance. Not of fear, but of respect. And far away in the alien colony, the people still mocked. They spoke of his foolishness, of his death, of his fragile human body that could not survive the wild. But they did not see what was happening in the forest. They did not see that the deadliest predator in the galaxy had begun to accept a human, not as prey, not as threat, but as a companion. Asterisk. The forest had swallowed him for nearly 2 weeks. The alien colony counted the days, then the nights, marking each one as proof of his death. By the 5th day, most declared him gone. By the 7th, they stopped speaking his name. By the 10th, they had already forgotten him. Humans are foolish, the merchant said. He will never return. The hunters agreed. He walked into death, the elders declared, shaking their heads. But on the 14th day, the silence of the wild broke. It began with a sound low, deep, rolling across the ground like distant thunder. The colony gates rattled, and the walls trembled. Aliens froze, eyes widening in fear. They knew that sound. Every child was raised to fear it. Every warrior had dreamt of it. The predator's roar. The noise grew louder, closer, shaking the very air. Mothers pulled their children inside. Warriors grabbed their weapons, and the council hurried to the gates. Panic rippled through the colony. The beast is coming here. It will tear down the gates. This is the end. Then the trees at the edge of the wild shook violently. Shadows moved between the trunks, and from the forest stepped the monster itself, the apex predator. Its golden eyes burned like suns, its massive body rippling with muscle, claws digging deep into the soil as it advanced. Its fur bristled in the light, its breath came in heavy snarls, and each step made the earthquake. The colony gasped, terrified. Weapons were raised, orders shouted, fear spreading like fire. But then, another figure appeared beside it. The human. He walked calmly, his back straight, his face steady. His hands did not hold a weapon, and his steps were unhurried. At his side, the predator moved not like a beast hunting prey, but like a companion guarding its equal. The alien crowd fell silent. Their disbelief was louder than their fear. They had expected bones, death, failure. Instead, they saw the impossible, a human, walking beside the deadliest creature in the galaxy as if they were friends. The commander stepped forward, his voice shaking with both fear and fury. This cannot be. No one tames the predator. It kills all. How is this possible? The human stopped at the gate. The predator stopped too, lowering its massive head, its eyes sweeping across the terrified aliens. But it did not roar, did not strike. It stood calmly, as though waiting for his signal. The human's voice was quiet, but it carried across the colony. You said I would not return. You said humans were weak. And yet, here I stand. And here he stands with me. Gasps echoed through the crowd. Some stumbled back. Others dropped their weapons in disbelief. The youngest sister of the council, who had mocked him the loudest before he left, covered her mouth in shock. This is not real. This cannot be real. But it was real. The predator's golden eyes glowed, its body towering above them. Yet it stood at peace beside the human. The human raised a hand slowly, resting it against the predator's thick fur. The beast gave a low growl, not of threat, but of acknowledgement. The ground shook under its rumble, but the sound was softer. It's almost protective. The crowd stared, speechless. For generations, they had believed the predator could never be tamed. They had sent warriors into the wild, and each time, those warriors had been destroyed. But now, before their eyes, the impossible lived. The old gray leader stepped forward, his voice trembling. What? What did you do? How did you survive? The human met his eyes calmly. I did not fight it. I did not run. I listened. I respected. And in time, it chose me as I chose it. The words fell heavy across the colony. Respect. Choice. These were not the weapons of warriors, not the tactics of hunters. They were something else, something only a human would think to try. The commander shook his head violently. No, this is not strength. This is trickery. The predator will kill us all if we allow it near. The predator's eyes flicked toward him, its growl rising. The commander stumbled back, his face pale. But before fear could turn to chaos, the human placed his hand firmly on the predator's side. "Peace," he whispered, and the predator obeyed. The colony gasped again, this time not from fear, but from awe. The human had not only survived the predator, he had commanded its respect. The young girl who had defended him before he left stepped forward now, her eyes wide, her voice soft with wonder. You did it. You really did it." The human gave a faint nod, not with power, not with fear, with patience, with trust. The predator lowered its massive head beside him, its golden eyes sweeping over the colony once more. But there was no hunger in its gaze now, only calm, only respect. The human stepped through the gates, the predator following at his side. The aliens moved back, making way, their voices hushed, their eyes filled with disbelief. Every lesson they had believed about strength and weakness shattered in that moment. They had mocked him, doubted him, even buried him in their minds. But the human had returned not as prey, not as victim, but as a living truth. He walked calmly into the heart of the colony, the apex predator at his side, and the aliens bowed, their heads in silence. For the first time, they understood. Humans were not weak. They were something else. The colony was silent. The human stood in the center of the square, the apex predator at his side. Its golden eyes scanned the crowd, its massive body towering over the tallest alien soldier. Yet it made no move to attack. It stood calm, its breathing steady, like a sentinel that had chosen its place. The aliens had gathered in fear, expecting screams and blood. But now they stood frozen, unable to speak. Mothers clutched their children, warriors tightened their grips on spears, and leaders stared in disbelief. The impossible had happened, and it stood before their eyes. For a long time, no one dared to move. Finally, the commander broke the silence. His voice trembled with both rage and fear. This cannot be real. A predator cannot be tamed. You trick us, human. You use some device, some weapon, the predator growled low, a warning rumble that shook the ground beneath their feet. The commander stumbled back, pale, his words cut short. The human placed his hand gently on the predator's fur, and instantly the growl softened. The beast lowered its head, calm once more. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The truth could no longer be denied. The old gray leader stepped forward, his voice low with awe. You did what none of us could. You faced the predator and lived. No, you did more than live. You returned with it as your ally. The human met his gaze, his voice steady but strong enough to carry across the colony. I did not tame it. I did not break it. I earned its respect, and in return, it gave me its trust. The words sank deep into every ear. They were simple, yet heavier than any weapon. The young girl, the one who had defended him before, stepped closer, her eyes shining. How did you do it when our strongest failed? The human looked at her, then at the entire crowd. His face was calm, but his eyes burned with quiet fire. Because you see strength only in force. You believe respect comes from power, from teeth, from claws, from fear. But that is not strength. That is domination. And domination always breaks. He paused, letting the silence grow heavy before speaking again. True strength is patience. It is courage when fear demands you run. It is trust when survival tells you to strike. The predator did not bow to me because I was stronger. It walked with me because I refused to see it as an enemy. The aliens shifted uneasily, their minds racing. Everything they had been taught since childhood, every story of the predator, every warning, every fear was collapsing. The commander shouted again, desperate. This is weakness. You show mercy to a beast that should be destroyed. One day, it will turn on you and kill you. The human's gaze turns sharp. Then it will be my fate. But until that day, we are not enemies. And that truth is greater than fear. The predator gave a deep snort, almost as if agreeing with him. The crowd stirred, whispering. Some bowed their heads, ashamed of their earlier laughter. Others stared at the human with something new in their eyes, not fear, not mockery, but respect. The old leader stepped closer, his voice solemn. You have shown us what we could not see. For generations, we believed the predator was only a monster, but now we see. The monster was not the beast. It was our arrogance. The human nodded slightly. You feared it because you never tried to understand it. Just as you feared humans, calling us fragile, weak, unworthy. But strength is not always in the body. Sometimes it is in the heart. The words fell like thunder. Even the children understood them. The predator lay down beside the human now, curling its massive body on the ground as though it had chosen to guard him. The sight left the colony breathless. The human looked over the crowd one last time. His voice was quiet, but every ear strained to hear. Remember this: fear builds walls. Respect builds bridges. If you live by fear, you will always fight. But if you live by respect, even your greatest enemy can walk beside you. Silence followed. No one mocked now. No one laughed. The aliens, who had doubted him most, stood pale and speechless. The young girl whispered to her mother, "Humans are not weak." The mother, once a voice of doubt, nodded slowly, her eyes wet. No, they are something greater. The old gray leader bowed deeply before the human. From this day, you will be remembered here not as prey, not as stranger, but as proof that humanity carries something no other race does. You have given us a lesson our people will never forget. The human inclined his head, placing his hand once more on the predator's fur. The beast rumbled softly, closing its eyes in peace. Then he turned toward the forest. "The wild still calls," he said, "and there are more truths within it. This is not the end. It is only the beginning." The predator rose, towering beside him again. Together, they stepped beyond the colony gates. Disappearing into the trees, the aliens stood in silence long after they were gone, and in their hearts, one truth echoed louder than fear, louder than doubt. Humans are not fragile. Humans are not weak. Humans are something the galaxy has yet to understand.